You know, when I close my eyes, I can still smell the diesel of that Greyhound bus. Funny how a scent can drag you back 50 years in an instant. Atlanta to Los Angeles, 2,000 miles of track-marked highways and cheap diner coffee. I was 22, armed with a battered suitcase, a half-finished acting resume, and the sort of reckless hope that only belongs to the very young. The moment those bus doors hissed open, Hollywood greeted me like a carnival. Neon signs flickered in the late afternoon haze, palm trees trembled in the warm breeze, and every stranger seemed to be smiling at secrets I hadn't learned yet. I thought, this is it, Maggie. This is where the dream begins. Of course, dreams have a way of hiding their teeth. I had a small roll of cash tucked inside my shoe, my mother's idea of security. She hugged me at the Atlanta station and whispered, "Keep your eyes wide open, baby." I promised her I would. But I was 22 and dazzled, and promises made in daylight can fade when the lights start sparkling. My first conflict came faster than I expected. I needed a place to sleep, and every motel I checked was either too expensive or too dangerous. A man with slick back hair offered me a cheap room just off Sunset and leaned in too close when he said it. I thanked him and walked away, clutching my suitcase like a lifeline. That night, I settled for a crowded hostel that smelled of hairspray and incense. The bunk above mine creaked whenever the girl on top tossed in her dreams. Morning brought my first taste of Hollywood sunlight, sharp, almost metallic. I wandered down Hollywood Boulevard, staring at the stars embedded in the sidewalk. Each name shimmered like a promise. Marilyn, Bogart, Garland. I whispered to myself, "Someday, Maggie Ross." That's when I met Claudia. Claudia appeared like a scene change. One moment I was alone, the next she was there, all auburn curls and movie poster confidence. She says, "New in town?" asked, balancing a paper cup of coffee in one manicured hand. I admitted I was, and she grinned like she'd been waiting for me. Within 10 minutes, she was telling me about auditions, photographers, and the magic of knowing the right people. Claudia had that kind of charm that makes you forget to be suspicious. She offered to show me around, girl to girl, and I accepted because it felt like fate. We spent the day skipping across studios and vintage shops. She introduced me to a casting assistant who promised to call if anything came up. By evening, we were sharing greasy fries at a corner diner, laughing like old friends. That's when she said it. "There's a party tomorrow night. Big names, producers. You should come." Her eyes glittered as if the party itself were a key to every locked door. I hesitated. Mom's warning echoed in my head, but Claudia waved it away with a flick at her red-polished nails. "Don't worry, sweet thing. These are classy people." Conflict number 2. Dream versus instinct. A tiny voice whispered, "Too fast, Maggie." Another voice, louder and silkier, said, "This is what you came for." I nodded. Of course I nodded. The next day passed in a blur of hopeful errands. I bought a second-hand dress the color of champagne and a pair of shoes that pinched but looked like they belonged to someone destined for a screen test. Inside, though, a knot of nerves twisted tighter with every tick of the clock. I called my mother from a payphone just to hear her voice. She asked if I'd eaten. I lied and said yes. She asked if I'd met good people, and I said a one or two and left it there. Evening descended with a velvet softness that belied the tension underneath. Claudia picked me up in a silver convertible that smelt faintly of expensive cologne. Music from the radio spilled into the warm night air, Fleetwood Mac, dreamy and restless. As we drove, the city lights pulsed like a heartbeat. Tump, 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 tump. I tried to match my breathing to the rhythm, but it kept slipping. The mansion sat atop a winding hill, its windows glowing like captured moons. Valets in crisp jackets whisked cars away while guests in glittering clothes floated toward the entrance. I clutched my tiny purse and followed Claudia through a door that opened into a universe of chandeliers and cigarette smoke. Inside, the air was thick with perfume and possibility. Laughter burst like champagne corks. A jazz trio played in the corner, each note sliding across the room like silk. People leaned close, whispered names, exchanged cards. I caught fragments of conversation. Casting call next week. European investors. Private screening tonight. Every word shimmered with opportunity. Then I saw him, Victor Hale. Tall, tailored, and magnetic in a way that made the airfield charged. When his eyes landed on me, I felt both chosen and exposed. He smiled, slow, deliberate. Claudia waved him over. "Maggie, this is Victor. He's the one I told you about. Talent manager, real connections." Victor took my hand, holding it just long enough for warmth to turn to heat. He said, "So you're the bright star from Georgia," he said, voice smooth as bourbon. "Claudia's been bragging about you." I stammered something about being new, about loving the movies. He listened with the patience of a hunter. Then he leaned in, eyes sparkling. "You've got presence, real presence. Let's talk about your future." The music swelled around us, heart, drowning out my mother's warning, drowning out common sense. Victor spoke of auditions, of a special screening test next week, of a private gathering where the real decisions happened. He made it sound like a door opening just for me. I wanted to believe him. God help me, I did believe him. But somewhere, beneath the glamour, I felt another current, a faint metallic taste of danger. Maybe it was the way Claudia avoided my eyes when Victor touched my arm. Maybe it was the girl in the corner whose smile didn't reach her eyes. Or maybe it was the sudden silence when I asked about the special gathering. The knot in my stomach tightened. Still, I smiled, because in that room of glitter and smoke, saying no felt like slamming the door on my own destiny. I left the party with a pocket full of phone numbers and a heart full of confusion. Back in the hostel bunk, the city hummed below like an engine that never sleeps. I replayed every glance, every word, every warning bell I tried to muffle. Dreams and danger were already braided together, and I was too entangled to pull free. That was my first night in Hollywood. The night I learned that the brightest lights can blind you long before they burn you. And the night a man named Victor Hale marked me as his next rising star or his next prey.
Chapter 2, Glitter and Chains.
I didn't sleep much after that first party. Every time I closed my eyes, Victor's smile flickered behind my eyelids like a neon sign I couldn't turn off. Opportunity or danger? The question looped through my mind until dawn spread across the Hollywood hills like a slow-burning film reel. I told myself it was only nerves. After all, this was Hollywood. Didn't every dreamer feel a little dizzy when the door finally cracked open? But a voice, thin and persistent, whispered in the back of my skull, Not every door leads where you think it does. By mid-morning, Claudia was at the hostel, her convertible purring like a satisfied cat at the curb. She wore a wide-brimmed hat and a grin that suggested she'd already lived 3 glamorous lives before breakfast. "Come on, sleepy starlet," she teased. "We're having lunch with Victor." Conflict number 1 of the day. I'd planned to drop off headshots at casting offices, but the lure of a private lunch with a man who could change my life, it pulled me like a riptide. I told myself it was just lunch. Just lunch. Victor's friends turned out to be a trio of sharply dressed men and one striking woman with a platinum bob that gleamed like a blade. We met at a tucked-away restaurant where the waiters whispered and the wine glasses sparkled like captured stars. They asked about my background, my ambitions, the kind of roles I longed to play. Every time I said something, Victor's eyes warmed as if I'd passed a secret test. Their compliments were intoxicating, a cocktail stronger than the champagne they kept refilling. Then came the first subtle chain. Victor leaned closer, voice velvet smooth. "There's a small screening tonight," he said, "very private. Only the real insiders. It's where deals are born. You should come." I hesitated. My mother's voice again, "Keep your eyes wide open, baby." But Claudia squeezed my hand under the table and whispered, "This is how it starts, Maggie. Don't blow it." I nodded. Of course I nodded. The screening was held in a hillside mansion even grander than the party house. Inside, everything glowed. Candles, chandeliers, the liquid shimmer of expensive perfume. But beneath the golden glass, something darker pulsed. A woman greeted me at the door with a kiss on each cheek and a drink already in her hand. The liquid was the color of molten amber. "It'll relax you," she purred. I took a cautious sip. Sweet at first, then bitter. My head felt lighter almost immediately. Victor introduced me to a parade of producers, photographers, and investors, each one more charming and slippery than the last. Compliments fell like confetti. My eyes, my voice, the star quality they claimed to see in every tilt of my chin. It should have been flattering. Instead, it felt hungry. Conflict number 2. Flattery versus instinct. Part of me wanted to melt into the attention, to finally feel chosen. Another part, quieter but stronger, kept scanning the room for exits. That's when I noticed the girls. Not just the glamorous ones chatting with photographers, but others tucked into corners, eyes glazed, movements slow as if underwater. One girl with a smudged eyeliner sat on a velvet couch staring at nothing while a man twice his age whispered into his ear. Claudia brushed past me, murmuring, "Don't worry, they're just tired." Tired didn't look like that. Victor appeared at my side like a shadow. "Maggie," he said, placing a hand at the small of my back. His touch sent a shiver, half thrill, half warning down my spine. He guided me through a hallway lined with black and white photographs of Hollywood legends. Every frame seemed to watch as we passed. He opened a door to a dimly lit room furnished with a low couch and a table scattered with glasses and, my stomach tightened, little vials of white powder. Victor noticed my glance and smiled. "Don't be shy. It's just to help the creativity flow." I stepped back. I'm not into that. His smile didn't falter. "Of course not. You're pure talent. That's why I like you." But his hand stayed on the door, blocking my exit. Conflict number 3. Ambition versus self-preservation. The room smelled of danger disguised as opportunity. I forced a laugh, trying to sound casual. "I should check on Claudia."
His eyes narrowed just enough to flash the predator behind the gentleman. Then he stepped aside. "Go ahead," he said softly, "but remember, Maggie, doors don't stay open forever." I slipped past him, heart hammering. The rest of the night blurred into a haze of music and murmured promises. I found Claudia laughing with a group near the pool, her eyes too bright, her laughter half a beat too late. When I whispered that I wanted to leave, she tightened her grip on my arm. "Relax," she said, voice sharp under the sugar. "This is how careers are made." But the knot in my stomach had hardened into a stone. I excused myself and called a cab from a side gate, ignoring Claudia's protest. The driver, an older man with kind eyes, looked at me in the rearview mirror and said nothing, but his silence felt like understanding. Back at the hostel, I scrubbed my skin raw in the commuter shower, trying to wash off the smell of expensive cologne and hidden menace. I told myself I'd stay away from Victor, that I'd focus on real auditions, the kind where talent mattered more than cocktails. But the next morning, a bouquet of white lilies waited at the front desk, no card except a single word on a folded slip of paper. Soon. That single word haunted me. Soon what? Soon who? I wanted to throw the flowers away, but I didn't. Instead, I placed them in the chipped glass by my bunk and stared at them until their scent filled the room, sweet, heavy, and almost suffocating. Within days, Claudia reappeared with another invitation. "A quick photo shoot," she said. "Nothing risky. Victor just wants some headshots. It's standard." Her smile tried to disguise the tremor in her voice. I asked about the girls from the screening, the ones with the empty eyes. She waved a hand dismissively. "Don't get paranoid, Maggie. Some people just can't handle the pace here." My instinct screamed louder this time, but ambition, ooh, that cruel, glittering thing, still whispered back, "One shoot can't hurt." That night, I lay awake listening to the city's restless heartbeat. The dreams still sparkled on the horizon, but the path towards them was beginning to feel like a trap disguised as a red carpet. The next step, I realized, wasn't just about chasing fame. It was about survival. And I wasn't sure which choice, going or refusing, would keep me safer.
Chapter 3. The Trap Tightens.
Some traps don't snap all shut at once. They tighten, slowly, silently, until one day you look down and realize the chain has been wrapped around your ankle the whole time. That was me in the weeks after that second party. I kept telling myself I was free to leave, free to choose, but each time I tried to pull back, something invisible tugged me forward. The first tug came in the form of a phone call. I picked up, expecting maybe a casting office or my mother. Instead, Victor's voice flowed through the receiver like honey poured over ice. "Maggie," he said, drawing out the syllables as if savoring them. "I've arranged a small photo session for you. Nothing fancy, just a few portraits to capture your essence." I started to protest. I had an open call to attend. But he chuckled softly. "Sweetheart, casting calls are for amateurs. You're already past that stage." My stomach fluttered with a dangerous mix of flattery and fear. Flattery won the first round. I agreed. The studio was hidden behind an unmarked door off Melrose Avenue. Inside, everything smelled faintly of roses and developer fluid. Bright lights bloomed overhead, soft enough to flatter, harsh enough to reveal. The photographer, a wiry man with restless eyes, greeted me with a nod.
Victor tells me you're the next big thing. Victor arrived moments later, Claudia trailing behind like a shadow. He handed me a garment bag. Something elegant, he said. Inside was a silk dress that clung like a second skin. Conflict number 1. Dignity versus opportunity. The dress was beautiful, but it felt strategic. I swallowed my discomfort and changed, convincing myself it was just fashion. The shoot began innocently. Headshots, soft smiles, a few dramatic poses. Then the photographer asked for something more vulnerable. Victor stepped closer, voice soothing. "Trust me, Maggie. Vulnerability is what sells." My pulse quickened. "I think we have enough," I said, forcing a laugh. Victor's eyes cooled by a fraction, but he nodded. "Of course, whatever makes you comfortable." Relief flooded me, too soon, because as I reached for my coat, Victor casually mentioned a private screen test scheduled for the weekend. He said, "Just a few investors, a chance to see you in motion." His tone made it sound like a gift, but something in his eyes felt like a lock clicking into place. Back at the hostel, I found Claudia waiting by the steps. Her usual sparkle was dimmed, replaced by a brittle tension. "Victor really likes you, Maggie," she said, lighting a cigarette with shaking fingers. "That's good, Maggie. That's security." The way she said security made it sound like a sentence instead of a blessing. I asked her how long she'd been working with Victor. She exhaled smoke and didn't answer. Conflict number 2. Friendship versus suspicion. Later that night, I heard muffled sobbing from her bunk. When I whispered her name, she only said, "Go to sleep, Maggie. Big day tomorrow." The sobbing didn't stop. The next morning brought another tug on the chain. A messenger delivered an envelope containing 2 crisp $100 bills and a handwritten note. For wardrobe, shine for me, V. The money both thrilled and terrified me. I'd been living on instant noodles and hostel toast, but accepting it felt like signing an invisible contract. I hid the envelope under my mattress and told myself I'd give it back. I didn't. All week, the city buzzed with the kind of restless energy that makes every shadow feel like a spectator. I rehearsed lines in front of cracked mirrors, sent resumes to casting offices, and tried to pretend Victor's invitation wasn't coiling tighter around my thoughts. But even as I auditioned for small commercials, I sensed his presence, like smoke slipping under a door. By Friday, Claudia informed me we'd be picked up at 8 for the screen test. When I asked who the investors were, she offered a too bright smile. "People who can change your life," she said. Then, softer, "Don't make them angry, Maggie." That night, the car arrived, a sleek black sedan that smelled of leather and expensive danger. Victor sat inside, legs crossed, smiles sharp enough to cut glass. Claudia slid in beside me, her perfume masking the faint scent of fear. As the car climbed the winding road towards the Hollywood Hills, my pulse matched the rhythm of the tires on asphalt. The hundreds meant the $100 bills were now signed papers. All the power was now Victor's. The $100 bills were traded in for some promises from Victor that he would make Maggie a big star. So, in return for the promises, she was now only his. The mansion was larger than the others, perched like a predator overlooking the city. Inside, the air was thick with incense and something chemical beneath it. A dozen people lounged across velvet couches, their laughter just a shade too loud. Victor guided me towards a side room. "This is where the magic happens," he said, his hand pressing lightly against my back. Inside, a camera stood on a tripod, its red light blinking like a watchful eye. A tray of drinks waited on a mirrored table, the liquid inside glowing amber and green. I hesitated at the threshold. Every nerve screamed to turn and run. But Claudia whispered, "It's fine, Maggie. Just a little improv. 5 minutes and you're golden." Conflict number 3. Obedience versus escape. I stepped inside. The screen test began with simple questions: my name, where I was from, my dreams. The cameraman's voice was gentle, almost hypnotic. Then he asked me to loosen up, to show vulnerability, the same phrase from the photo shoot. A drink appeared in my hand without me asking. Its scent was sweet, cloying. I set it down untouched. Victor entered, closing the door behind him with a quiet click. His smile was patient, but his eyes were knives. He said, "Relax, Maggie. Everyone here wants you to succeed. Just a little more openness." The room seemed to tilt. I remembered the dazed girls at the party, the hidden powder in the photo studio, Claudia's trembling fingers. I forced a smile and said I needed the restroom. Victor's jaw tightened. "Make it quick," he said. I slipped into the hallway and kept walking, past the restroom, past the laughing investors, past Claudia's pleading eyes. Outside, the night air hit me like a slap. A valet approached, but before I could speak, Victor's voice called from the doorway, "Maggie, don't be childish." His tone was velvet over steel. My heart raced. I looked at the valet, an older man with weathered eyes. I whispered, "Please, call me a cab." He nodded almost imperceptibly. Minutes later, a taxi screeched to the curb. I jumped in, slammed the door, and didn't breathe until the mansion disappeared behind the curve of the hill. Back in the safety of my hostel room, adrenaline still buzzing through my veins, I finally allowed the truth to surface. This wasn't about auditions or screen tests. This was a machine that fed on girls like me, naive, hungry, dazzled by glitter. But survival wasn't victory, because the next morning, a single envelope slid under my door. Inside was a photograph of me from the night before, taken when I thought no one was looking. On the back, in Victor's neat handwriting, were 3 words: "Doors stay open."
Chapter 4. Escape at Midnight.
I still remember the night the truth finally cracked open like a rotten egg. It wasn't a clean, sudden break. No, it was slow, sticky, and it smelled of danger long before the shell gave way. I'd been living in Los Angeles for nearly 6 months by then. 6 months of smiling at casting directors who barely looked up from their coffee. 6 months of learning how to live on instant noodles and the occasional diner sandwich. 6 months of half promises from people who spoke with velvet tongues but carried knives in their back pockets. You know that feeling when your skin tells you something before your brain does? Like a shiver that doesn't belong to the weather? I carried that feeling everywhere. It sat at the base of my spine like a little animal, twitching whenever Marcus or Celeste called. Marcus, with his silk shirts and quick practice laugh.
Celeste with her sparkling eyes that always seemed to look through you, not at you. They were my friends, or at least that's what I told myself late at night when the city hummed like an electric wire outside my window. Friends don't invite you to parties where doors stay locked from the outside. Friends don't keep your purse in another room for safety. Yet I kept answering their calls. Why? Because I still wanted it. The stage lights, the fame, the idea that one lucky break could turn me into someone the world cared about. The first crack appeared on a Thursday night. Celeste had invited me to a private audition. Her words were honeyed. Baby, this is the one. No lines to memorize. Just come as you are. Big producer, big future. I almost said no. Almost. How many lives hang on that one word? But then she mentioned a name, a director I'd read about in Variety, and my stubborn hope elbowed common sense aside. I went. The audition was held in a house up in the Hollywood Hills. Calling it a house is like calling the ocean a puddle. Marble floors, gold railings, windows taller than a church door. From the outside, it looked like success carved in stone. But inside, though, inside, it smelled wrong, sweet, chemical, like perfume mixed with hospital bleach. Marcus greeted me with a hug that lingered too long. His eyes darted, quick and nervous, like a thief's. Celeste floated in behind him, glittered dust in her hair, smiled just a little too wide. Relax, she whispered, guiding me to a hallway. The producer's running late. Have a drink. A glass Kemp waiter appeared from nowhere with a silver tray. 2 glasses of something neon pink. I shook my head. The waiter didn't move. Neither did Celeste. My heartbeat felt like a drum solo inside my ribs. I'm good, I said, forcing a smile. Audition first, drink later. For a split second, Celeste's eyes hardened, like a curtain dropping on a stage. Then she laughed it off and led me to a lounge lined with velvet couches. The door clicked shut behind us. That's when the second crack opened. A man stepped out from a shadowed corner. Tall, expensive suit, smile that didn't reach his eyes. He introduced himself as Mr. Harlan, the producer. But there was no camera, no script, only a low glass table scattered with some small white pills. "Loosen up," he said, motioning to the couch. "We like to see how free our girls can be." Girls. Not actors. Not artists. Girls. Something inside me went cold and sharp. I thought of my mother's voice back in Atlanta warning me about shiny strangers with easy promises. I thought of every late-night whisper from the other girls I'd met at parties, stories of friends who went missing after a special audition. I stood. "Wrong room," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. Marcus blocked the door. "Don't be rude," he said, smiling like a wolf. "Mr. Harlan came all the way here for you." Celeste touched my arm. "Just one drink, honey. One. Show 'em you're fun." My heart hammered, my palms slicked with sweat. Every exit felt a mile away. That's when the door creaked. Just a hair. Enough for a thin slice of hallway light to cut through the velvet gloom. Another girl, someone I didn't know, peeked in. Her eyes widened when she saw me, and in that split second of surprise, I moved. I shoved Marcus with every ounce of fear-fed strength I had. He stumbled back, cursed. I yanked the door, slammed into the hallway, and ran. The marble floor echoed each frantic step, sharp heel clacks and breathless gasp. Behind me, voices shouted. Ahead, a staircase curved down like a silver river. I flew. I don't even remember my feet touching the steps, only the pounding in my ears, the taste of metal in my mouth, the sudden roar of night air when I burst through the front door. A taxi waited at the curb, as if the universe had thrown me a rope. I dove inside and shouted the first address that came to mind, my tiny apartment in Koreatown. The driver didn't ask questions. God bless him, he just drove. Back in my room, I locked the door and slid to the floor. My body shook like a paper caught in the wind. For hours, I stared at the cracked ceiling, replaying every detail. Marcus's grip, Celeste's smile, Mr. Harlan's eyes, flat and hungry. I wanted to cry. I wanted to scream. Instead, I sat in silence, listening to the city outside. Cars hissed down wet streets. Somewhere a siren wailed like a wounded animal. That was the night I understood the game. It wasn't about talent. It wasn't even about beauty. It was about control. Break a girl's body, film it, threaten her dreams, and she becomes a puppet with strings made of fear. And yet, here's the strangest thing. A tiny ember of defiance glowed beneath all that fear. I wasn't broken. Not yet. The next morning, Marcus called 17 times, then Celeste. I didn't answer. They left messages, sweet at first, then sharp. Misunderstanding, they said. Big chance, they said. Don't throw it away, they said. But I knew. Oh, I knew. A door once opened cannot be unseen. But survival isn't the same as victory. I'd escaped the house, yes, but I hadn't escaped the city, or the dream, or the hunger that brought me there. And somewhere in the back of my mind, a dangerous question whispered, if I walk away now, what was all this suffering for? That question would follow me into the next conflict, the next decision. Because running from predators is one thing. Running from your own ambition, that's a different kind of war. And I wasn't done fighting. Not yet.
Chapter 5. Freedom at a Price.
Sometimes survival doesn't feel like victory. Sometimes it feels like standing on a quiet street at dawn, shoes still wet with fear, and wondering if the world even noticed you made it through the night. That's how the days after the Hollywood Hills house felt, a strange, aching quiet. I stayed in my small apartment, curtains drawn, heart still beating to the rhythm of that terrible night. Every sound made me flinch. Phone rings, door knocks, even the creak of my own floorboards. Marcus kept calling, Celeste too. The voicemails turned from sugar to poison. You're making a mistake. We can ruin you. Nobody will believe your little story. Each message was a reminder of the trap I'd almost stepped into. Each one chipped at the last fragile layer of my dream. I didn't answer, not once. Instead, I sat with my fear until it began to soften, until the sharp edges dulled into something else, something like clarity. One evening, a week after my escape, I took a walk. The city smelled of rain and exhaust. The neon lights blinked like tired eyes.
I wandered without purpose until I found myself standing before a small diner. Through the glass, I saw a young couple laughing over milkshakes. The girl had freckles. The boy had paint on his jeans. They looked ordinary, beautifully ordinary. Something inside me cracked, but this time it wasn't terror, it was longing. Not for fame, not for cameras, but for that simple joy of belonging somewhere. I pressed my hand to my chest and whispered to the night, I want that. I want life, not just applause. A memory floated up then, gentle but insistent, my mother's kitchen back in Atlanta, the smell of cornbread, her voice as she braided my hair. She'd say, You are enough, Ruby. You don't have to chase stars to shine. I'd roll my eyes at the time, eager to run toward the glitter of Hollywood, but standing there in the drizzle, I finally heard her, really heard her. I wanted to call her, to tell her everything, but shame held my hand like a heavy stone. What would she think? Would she hear the disappointment I carried like a scar? Still, that night I dialed her number. Her sleepy hello cracked something open in me. I cried, big, messy, hiccuping sobs. She didn't interrupt. She just listened. And when I finally spilled the whole story, the parties, the pills, the door that almost closed forever, she said the simplest, most powerful words, Come home. Home. The word wrapped around me like a warm quilt, not as surrender, but as salvation. 2 days later, I packed my single suitcase. The phone kept ringing. I left it on the counter, battery dying, like a snake finally losing its hiss. On the bus ride east, the desert stretched wide and silent. I watched the horizon bleed from gold to purple and felt something inside me loosen. Dreams can be beautiful, yes, but they can also be cages when you chase 'em blind. For the first time in months, I slept without fear. Back in Atlanta, life moved slower. The air smelled of pine and fresh bread. Neighbors waved. People called me by my name, not by potential. I got a small job at a local theater, sweeping floors and painting sets. No cameras, no glitter, no predators lurking in velvet rooms. Just the honest joy of creating something with my own hands. And you know what? That tiny stage gave me more fulfillment than all the empty promises of Hollywood ever could. Because there, under simple lights, I wasn't bait or merchandise. I was a person, a storyteller. Enough. Years passed. I married a kind man who loved my laugh more than my looks. We raised children who filled the house with music and muddy shoes. Life was not glamorous. It was better. It was real. Every now and then, when an old movie comes on TV, I wonder what might have happened if I'd stayed. Would I have become a star, or just another name in a quiet police report, a girl who went missing after an audition? I'll never know, and I'm grateful for that uncertainty because it reminds me of the thin line between ambition and danger. Here's what I want every young woman to hear, especially the ones dreaming big under bright city lights. Stop chasing dreams blindly. The world is not just glitter and cameras. There are people, men and women both, who feed on hope like vultures, who smile while plotting to shatter you. Yes, chase your passions. Yes, believe in your talent. But carry your eyes wide open. Care about your family more than strangers' applause. Protect your heart as fiercely as you protect your body. Life is only short when it's comfortable. When it's filled with misery and sorrow, it can stretch endlessly, painfully. Choose the kind of short that feels warm, not the kind that bleeds. Remember this: you already have value. You already shine. No director, no producer, no casting couch can give you what you were born with. Now, as a 70-year-old woman, I sit with my memories like old photographs spread across the table. Some edges are frayed, some colors have faded, but the lesson remains sharp as glass. Dreams are precious, but life, real life, is priceless. If my story keeps even one girl from walking into a locked room with a smiling stranger, then every scar, every sleepless night, every tear shed on that lonely Hollywood street was worth it. That, my dear listener, is the light I almost missed. And the reason I tell you this tonight is simple, so you don't have to miss yours.